1991 as a member of the Victoria local exchange trading system, which is often considered to be the second LETS, the number 2 LETS created after the first LETS in Comox Valley that was started by Michael Linton. I didn't start Victoria LETS. I was the administrator from 1992 to 1997 before deciding to move to Asia. I'm going to be speaking to you about the worldwide database of complementary currency systems. And as a background to that, as we heard from Rolf and other speakers, at that time we did not yet have a movement, but there were a number of people starting to try and reach out to each other through the internet or bulletin board systems. And like I was contacting Edgar around that time, as like the very first times I was connecting on the internet, I was trying to find other people working in complementary currencies in other countries. And as Rolf mentioned, a lot of creators like Michael Linton may not have known what Edgar Kahn was doing, or Paul Glover over in Ithaca, or others. Sometimes that was through intentional. They didn't really want to contact each other. They wanted to develop independently. And then there were others like me who were trying really hard to network. So I phoned Paul Glover at his house one day and ordered the Hometown Money kit and those made those kinds of efforts to network. That conflicted a bit with Michael Linton's view of how complementary currencies should develop. He had trademarked his intellectual property and was trying to insist that LET systems develop only according to the type that he outlined in the LET system design manual. And that caused quite a lot of difficulty and conflict between people who were working with mutual credit systems at the time. He was very opposed to administration of LET systems. He felt that the administration should not be compensated in any way for their work, that it should not generate any revenues, that demurrage should not be allowed, that systems that, in the case of Victoria LETs, systems that were spending their administration or were taxing the members to fund an administration to the point at which the system was capsizing because the administration account was minus 25,000 in debt and there were only 100 members in the system, as it was when I came into Victoria LETs. He felt that systems like that should die and that no efforts should be made to modify the mutual credit model that, as he defined it, the LET system model, to correct these systems. So pretty early on, I started to diverge from him and took a lot of personal attacks for many, many years that some of you have also experienced from him. That led me to create the worldwide database on complementary currency systems because actually I should just by saying it's at complementarycurrency.org and CC database, less public, HTML. It was created 13 years ago, so it built on PHP MySQL in the very early days of that web platform. Sorry, I'm transferring it from open platform to PowerPoint, so you'll see some unusual formatting in it. But you can see the website there, the Complementary Currency Resource Center. So at the time, there was an idea that there was only one type of complementary currency system. But when I started to reach out to others, Bernard Lietaer, Edgar, Henk van Arkel at Stro, Heloisa and Primavera and others in Ecuador and Argentina and Mexico City with Luis Lopez Yera, I was starting to see that there were many different kinds of complementary currency systems, but the English-speaking community was quite blind to what was going on in the French and Spanish and German language communities, and I started to make an effort also together with Miguel to try and bring documents, translate documents from Spanish and French and German into English so that we could broaden the knowledge base within the English language community and sort of reduce a bit of the arrogance that was going on within the English-speaking community about how these systems should be functioning. So the CC database was a part of that. The idea was to encourage system administrators or representatives from around the world to voluntarily identify their systems so that they could start to, we could show the full diversity that was possible with complementary currencies, and that rather than create an orthodoxy around one single type of mutual credit system. So it was built in 2003. There's voluntary registration of systems. There's only 309 systems over those 13 years have been registered of an estimated 4,500 systems worldwide. That's there's a critique I will get to at the end. There's also an open library with 420 documents that anyone can upload or download, 355 images in the gallery, and we have a research group with 25 members now. We'll have a meeting about that on Friday morning at 9 o'clock here. But at the moment there's 25, but if there was a peak of 150 undergraduate and graduate researchers and authors and others. The reason I'm doing this presentation is because the platform is really at its end of life. So unless there's new life given to the platform, I should terminate it because the PHP is so out of date that further software updates to the platform break things all the time. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to quickly run through a typology, because at that time there was some discussion of typology of complementary currencies, but is much more developed now. But at the time we didn't really have one, so I started to put one together with Bernard Lietaer and Thomas Greco. But anyway, so starting with the number of registrations, we have the majority of them are coming from Europe, followed by North America and Asia Pacific, and then South America, which is really too bad because at a time I knew that there were many more systems in South America. Our typology then are these 10 points here. The type of system, the medium of exchange, the unit of value, valuation, cost recovery, source of funding, purpose for starting, size of membership, annual operating budget, and the annual volume of trade. And we can aggregate statistics on that. So in terms of reasons for starting a complementary currency system, the database generates, outputs graphics, so we can, anyone can generate graphics on any of these typology items. And you can see that for the most part, all of these reasons given are the main reasons why people start these systems. But they can be, as you see, poverty alleviation, creating a new market, and so on. Right? I'll give you a chance to look at that. I think you can see it clearly from there. Right? So but you could say that community development and activating the local marketplace would be some of the main reasons for starting a system. But this can be very helpful when developing marketing materials. You can see the key terms that people use to identify these systems, and that can improve how you communicate this to the general public. In terms of types of systems, when the database started off, there were probably 2 or 3. It would be a let system or mutual credit, and a time bank, and so on. But now we have many different types or brands of systems related to STROs, or social trade organizations, platforms, CEL in France, Regiogeld, and so on. So we started to see the types of systems really begin to flourish. In terms of medium of exchange, electronic transactions dominate, followed by notes and bills, and so on. Now there's a lot of overlap in this, but that's because people can add mediums of exchange that may not have been invented yet. So, well, there's that, and there's also the fact that there are people who, system administrators, I would say many of them don't understand how their systems are classified in typological terms, or they don't understand the theory of their systems very well. So they make mistakes in not seeing that an item has already been listed, but then they create a new listing, and it's really hard for a database administrator to unify that data again. Okay, unit of value, there's national currency equivalent is generally what dominates, so like let systems where they would be $1 green and so on, and then followed by time banks, independent value, and then a number of other ways of valuing. In terms of valuation, this is also something that a lot of people have difficulty understanding, and we still do, and we still discuss it between us, but about contractual and non-contractual agreements to accept the currency. The idea here would be what is the imperative, or how important or required is it for people to exchange with each other? If they receive credit in the system, do they have to accept it back when people demand it, or can they refuse to make a trade in return? And that can affect whether the system is robust or suitable for commercial interests, or if it's only for individuals trading between each other. Okay. In terms of cost recovery, most systems don't charge any fees, at least the systems listed in this database, followed by annual fees, account opening fees, transaction fees, and other administration fees. But you can see that there are people, systems have tried a wide variety of different cost recovery mechanisms. Yeah. Okay. So in conclusion, the database was built when there were just a few types of systems, and the purpose was to show the full diversity possible and try to increase the understanding between across language barriers or national distance, between different countries about what was happening overall. So it's kind of a movement-oriented. However, as I mentioned before, there's only 300 of some estimated 4,500 systems listed. And we've tried very hard to reach the Spanish-speaking, French-speaking, German-speaking communities, as well, of course, the English-speaking community to list their systems in the database. And the database is fully translated into 8 languages, into Thai and Japanese and so on, to encourage people to list systems. But it hasn't been used to the extent possible, and that's something that we're going to work on if the database is going to continue. Voluntary registration led to incorrect data and unofficial registration of systems. So that, as you can see, there's a lot of items overlap, so it's not easy to make very clear statistical conclusions based on the data that's there. Again, many system representatives lack understanding of the theory of the system. So if they say their system's a mutual credit, but then they say that their medium of exchange is fiat, and so on, there's more education needed among system administrators to really understand how their systems operate, in using economic terminology. And lastly, many system representatives think that their system is completely unique, and they don't see how they're similar to others. So for medium of exchange, rather than say mutual credit, or people would often say time or green dollars or acorns, or they would name their own individual currency, thinking that it was completely unique or different than any other kind of mutual credit currency. So that makes it very difficult to aggregate statistics on. Yeah. Okay, that's everything.
Thank you, Steve, for your brief and clear presentation. So there are some questions. So first, Jorge, and then you.
So you mentioned that the web page is being deprecated or closed. Do you plan to replace it, or if not, can I access the database somehow?
Can I turn? Oh yeah, this works. Well, absolutely. I have made the data available I've done data dumps in the past, and because so few people request the data dump, because it then requires some understanding of MySQL to work with that data. But yeah, absolutely, it's open data, it's voluntary registration, so yes, the data will still be available, and we're in discussions about with potential partners about making that stronger. For example, with the Credit Commons Collective and Matthew Slater, they're looking with their software platform. They are looking at automatically generating statistics and distributing that through RSS, which could then populate the database in a way that doesn't, which aggregates operating statistics in a way that doesn't get manipulated by the administrators and so on. So we can have much more accurate statistics about how systems are operating. So yeah, hopefully it will continue on. I think there's value in it, but there's not value in it if there's only a few hundred systems out of thousands. Yeah.
Hi, is this working?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a data geek, so a question, how many, the 300 systems could be considered the breadth of the system, and the length could be considered the number of time periods or the number of years over which you have transactions data? What would you say the size of that data set is, of the total breadth times the average length? So for example, if there was 10 there was an average of 10 years of data, 300 times 10 would be 3,000 data points. Any idea of roughly what that number would be?
No, I really don't know offhand. I could work it out, but just not at the not at the moment. From what I'm seeing, I don't know if I have it in my paper that I submitted, but let's see if I do. But certainly into the millions of members of complementary currency systems, even with those 300. But I can't find it at the moment. It's not. I don't want to waste your time trying to dig it up. Yeah.
Miguel and Stephen, it's great to see you again. I'm Susan Witt.
Yes.
I'm
great to see you
the
too, Susan.
co-founder of Berkshire's, and I think as you're giving this history, it's critical to acknowledge the work of Ralph Borzotti with Constance and the
Absolutely.
Robert Swan.
Yes, and Robert Swan too.
Pioneering work of Robert
Yes.
Swan.
Yeah. I think we need a Hall of Fame. We really do. There's people that I've been fortunate enough to meet Bob Swan many years ago, and it's great to still be active in this movement and that it's continuing on. And we do have elders that can't be here today, like Thomas Greco and Bernard Lietaer and others as well too that I admire very much.
Okay. Hi. In your study, have you seen some complementary currency implemented by the central government, like Ecuador? I don't know, in your opinion, what are the advantages and problems by the implementations? Hola? Hi? Again. Okay, in your study, have you seen some complementary currency implemented by the central government, like Ecuador? In your opinion, what are the problems and benefits about it?
Actually, I don't think that any system started by national governments have registered themselves in the system. Yeah, or there was in Venezuela as well too. There were attempts under Chavez to create complementary currencies that were state-backed, or maybe they still are. Yeah, as far as I know, I'm not familiar with any. I was hoping that some would. I know there's quite a few municipalities, of course, or cities that are involved in implementing these systems. Mm-hmm. But I don't see a difference between a municipality backing a system and an organization backing a system as well, too. Yeah, as long as their intention in designing and implementing the system is basically the same. They have open social goals rather than social control goals. That's the big difference for me, I think.
All right. Hi. My name is Coco. I want to stand up, but I kind of barricaded myself in here with stuff. So what struck me about your presentation was that a lot of people that are starting a currency don't have a lot of knowledge on what they're doing. Doesn't necessarily have to be theoretical, but at least that there are other people doing the same thing. So I'm wondering, like, how can we create some sort of this networking skill that you have? How can we use that to create this, spread this knowledge and make sure that people that are starting a currency know beforehand, like, what's out there, what do we know, what can we do? Because I've heard, I'm doing research in the Netherlands on complementary currencies as well, and in the small towns, and if grassroots currencies are starting, it's difficult to find information or to find out how the programs work or how the IT works. So yeah, just a thought, and maybe we can think about it or discuss it.
Yeah, well, for my part, I reached out a lot and started using this as an opportunity to improve my Spanish and my French and my German. And there's the complementary currency, like my website. You can sign up for and receive weekly news updates from the field, which I've aggregated a lot of news sources. Of course, in every language, major language, there are complementary currency organizations that people can get involved in. So I think it's really a matter of reaching out. There are courses now available, like the Money and Society MOOC through Cumbria University, run by Dr. Jem Bendel. Thomas Greco as well does a course every year for a week in Greece, in Kalikalos. The next one's in June. That they're very good ways of digging deeply into mutual credit, especially mutual credit theory, which is what their main approach is. But yeah, that's what I can suggest, is people just need to reach out a lot more and try and find these groups and come together around them. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Coco? Mm-hmm. Right. Well, on I think it's Thursday afternoon, I'll be talking about the Complementary Currency Alliance and the Credit Commons Collective. And there are a number of initiatives underway to bring what we're doing together, across types of systems, across languages, between different countries. And I'll talk about that. But it's complementarycurrency.org/alliance. And I'll be announcing it more formally during my next presentation later in the week. But it's basically, that's what we should be doing is coming together to and making an effort to work more closely together, at least in areas where we can. And we're doing our own thing in other areas as well too, which is important for diversity and heterogeneity in the movement. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. So thank you very much. And I'd like to know. I'd like to add that here Susan is a very important person, because very few of you, if any, knows her very well. Susan has been also very active for like 25 years, right, or even more. And she's been active in Massachusetts. So she set up for Berkshire in 2006, and it's one of the most active local currencies in the U.S. And please try to talk with her to learn more experiences from her. Well,